Mary, I'm thinking about political leadership, particularly during the climate crisis. What gives you hope? What gives you despair when you see the leaders around the world?
The problem with political leadership is that not enough leaders are in crisis mode, really, really feeling the crisis. The good thing is that those from the small island states and poor developing countries do feel in a crisis, and their voices are pushing. But this COP is not inclusive enough to have the wider voices of civil society and indigenous peoples, and those who have come to previous COPs with strong voices. Many of them are not here.
You are having multiple meetings, inside COP, outside of COP. Is there a sense of urgency in the conversations you're having?
There's a real sense of urgency. I go to the green zone and people say to me, I don't know what they're doing over there in the blue zone. This afternoon I'm going out to the People's Summit deliberately as an elder because I want to listen to even more urgency out there. I'm also hoping with some women that we're bringing together to meet indigenous women from the Amazon who feel completely in despair. They've come all the way from the Amazon and they don't feel that they're at the decision table and they don't feel anybody's listening to them.
Nature and the climate crisis, they go hand in hand. You are one of nature's champions. This is a title that you have. Can you help us understand how critical this is? What is that message you need to get out?
I'm so pleased to talk about nature and climate together. It's a pity we have two framework conferences, COP26 and the Convention on Climate Biodiversity, which will be in Kunming mainly next year, because we should bring them much more closely together. We're doing it, but we're not really doing it enough. They're two sides of the same coin. We need to understand that the loss of biodiversity and extinction of species is destroying our ecosystem that sustains us.
There are everyday statements, pronouncements being made from COP26, but they're just statements and pronouncements. What do you make of them? Which ones stood out for you? Which ones did you say, now that's a bit different?
I'm not sure if it's a big difference, but the statement on deforestation, the declaration on deforestation, did include significant money to indigenous peoples, at last, over $1 billion. I think it was 1.25 billion. And it's the indigenous who saved the forests. And to have that recognized is at least a step forward. But we will remember, Femi, in 2014 in New York, we had a declaration on no deforestation. So I believe that now we need transparency and accountability. I welcome the fact that the Secretary General has announced that he's going to set up a high-level body on accountability. I hope he puts some really sharp young people on that, because they know what's real in this world.
One of your passions is climate justice. We're talking about climate, obviously. Are we talking about climate justice enough?
I don't think we do fully understand the kind of layers of climate injustice. First of all, that it affects the poorest countries and communities first and hardest. Secondly, the gender dimension. Women have different social roles. It affects them. Thirdly, the intergenerational dimension. Fourthly, the injustice of the different pathways of regions. Industrialized countries like Ireland, Europe, the United States, we built our economies on fossil fuel and have to wean ourselves off. But developing countries want to go green and haven't had the technology, the skills, even the intellectual property. And then the fifth injustice, the one we're talking about, the injustice to nature herself. And these are all linked. And I wish people would talk in a more people-centered way about the injustice. Instead of that, we've got a very non-inclusive COP, and people are quite angry about it.
The second week of COP starts with adaptation, climate adaptation.
Adaptation and loss and damage.
And loss and damage, thank you. How would you like people to understand what that means today?
Adaptation is incredibly important. It only gets less than 20% of the climate finance. We need to get it up to 50% of the 100 billion and other kinds of climate finance, because that's the way people are making themselves adapt. But in some cases, we've gone beyond adaptation, and that's why loss and damage is so important. And we've skittled around loss and damage at recent conferences. I am glad that this COP seems to be taking it seriously. I understand that 2 ministers have been appointed on loss and damage for the first time to bring it home in the final declaration. And I was glad Scotland gave special money to loss and damage. I hope other countries will do likewise. This is real now, loss and damage.
Finally, what is your headline from your experience at COP26 so far? What would your headline be?
I will wait until I am sure at the end of COP26 that we are fully aligned with 1.5 degrees, because that's the only safe world. No half-full glasses, nothing like that will persuade me. We need to be fully aligned with 1.5 degrees. We need a political, transparent and accountable pathway that we cannot avoid, and that it's not greenwashing and it's not euphemisms. It's precise. The pathway to 1.5 is clear, and then the COP will have done its job.
No room for compromise?
None, because we can't compromise with our future.